Today's episode is brought to you by the University of Hawaii, College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources, and the Seeds of Wellbeing, or SOW project. This podcast is supported by the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network, grant from the U.S. Department of Ag, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, and the Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Aloha and welcome to the SOW podcast, aimed to provide educational support, information, guidance, and outreach to our farmers, ranchers, and our allied agriculture producers in Hawaii. We are your hosts, Mele Ushiro and
Shannon Sand.
And today we're going to be talking about some different resources for dealing with farm and ranch stress with Don McMorran. Thank you, Don, for joining us today.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So Don is the director for, you may have to correct me on this, I want to say Skagit?
Think of like a jet airplane.
Skagit.
Jet, yeah.
Skagit County Extension Office at Washington State University, and is also an Ag and Natural Resources Extension agent. So Don, can you tell us a little bit about how you came to your current position and how you came to work in the area you currently do?
Yeah, it's kind of a great story because I'm a fourth generation farm kid from right here in my home county. And growing up at around age 9, my dad drugged me to the research station, and I just so happened to watch a presentation of my predecessor, Devon Haven. She was giving this really cool talk about cover crops and how it's really important for the land, for reducing erosion, putting nutrients back in the soil. And I thought, man, she has this really cool job. She gets paid to help farmers. And so I always just kind of kept that in the back of my mind. My whole life I wanted to be a farmer. But then when I was a sophomore in college, I came home for Christmas break. And at the end of break, my dad sat me down. He's like, son, we've gotten into some pretty bad years here. And I'm going to have to sell off the potato section of the farm. And when I do that, this farm isn't going to be big enough for the both of us. So you're going to have to find a job. And so that's when I went from being a C student to a B student, and went back to school after that break and sat down with my school counselor. And I was like, I got to find a job. Like and so at that point in time, I thought I would be a wrestling coach and a ag teacher. And then, so I graduated with my bachelor's of science, and I just barely squeaked in and got into grad school, where I became a 4.0 straight A student, very driven. And I came home and I taught Spanish for a year, and I worked at the conservation district for 4 years. And then Devon actually retired, and I interviewed for this job. And I don't know if it's better lucky or good, but either way, I squeaked into the position, beat out a whole bunch of really talented folks. And 16 years later, here I am.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that with us, Don. I think that's a very interesting story, right? And I always feel the same about extension, learning to be able to share with your producers and work with the farmers is such a good thing for me. I like working one-on-one with them as well. You want to share with us maybe how you got involved with the Farm and Ranch Stress program and what you're doing with them?
Mm-hmm.
Certainly. Unfortunately, I kind of became part of the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network through a series of unfortunate events. So when I was a sophomore in college, my dad's hired man took his own life. And he was, not only an employee, but also a close family friend, kind of a father figure in my life. And his passing had a great impact on me. And at the time, I never thought that I'd ever work in farm stress suicide prevention. But after getting hired on into this position in 2006, fast forward to 2016, we had, to my knowledge, another suicide here in Skagit County. And there was actually a series of 3 agricultural suicides between the years of 2016 and 2019. The third was a gentleman that I had worked for when I was at the conservation district here in Skagit. And he was the epitome of the crusty old farmer. I'm sure you have them on Hawaii too. You know, those grumpy guys that like they demand that you're going to do things to perfection, and gosh darn it, it better be right. But I just really liked that guy. It just so happened that he had a niece that was the same age as me, and the niece had twin children the same ages as my children, and we had her children over to my house shortly after the event, and here I am having this conversation with a 9-year-old about her great uncle and the decision that he made. And I don't know if you've ever had in your life just something happen that you were just like, that's it, I've had enough. I can't have any more of this happen. And that's what happened with that particular suicide. And I distinctly remember coming to work the next Monday, and I'm like, that's it, guys. We got to get involved in this issue. And so I sat my staff down and I asked them if they'd join me in this fight for farm stress suicide prevention. And if you know my staff, just amazing people, very giving. And they're like, sure, you know, what do we got to do? Sign us on, whatever it takes. Let's stop this. And so we kind of went through this path of, you know, doing some research, finding out that, hey, this is really an endemic problem for the United States and around the world. Suicide rates for farmers and farm workers was skyrocketing. And then we had the research. So then we're like, okay, we know it's a problem. Let's find the money. So it just so happened that the Department of Health, actually this Washington State legislature had already kind of fast forwarded. So they knew that there was a problem, and they had given some money to the Washington State Department of Health.
Nice.
Department of Health, fabulous people. I mean, just really giving, really great people.
Yeah.
But just no connection to agriculture, right? Most of them grew
I
up
think
in the
that's
city.
been some of our experience as well with some of these is that, you got to have a special understanding of the people you're dealing with. Yeah,
totally. So they're like, we have this money. We have to outreach to farmers in Washington State. We don't even know farmers. We don't know how to talk to them. We don't know how to outreach to them. And so they were telling some of this story at a meeting, and meanwhile I'm like on the sidelines, like screaming up and down, waving my hands, hey, we want to help you. And so after that it's just kind of all serendipitous. Like they're like, okay, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, hey, can I start a pilot program in Skagit County for farm stress suicide prevention? And they're like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, okay, I want to, at all my workshops, every talk I give, I want to talk and give talk about farm stress suicide prevention. I'm like, okay, well, that sounds pretty good. And so we started down this road of doing this work. And from there, we kind of like realized like, hey, we got this really special thing. We're doing really good work, but we're doing it, you know, if you look at the map, we're doing it in this very, you know, small area. So you could put a pin in it. And you get online, you read a newspaper, and you're hearing about how there's problems all over the country and all over the world about farmers taking their own lives. And so if you know me, you know that I like to get involved. I like to try to solve problems. So it's just kind of how things worked out. So we went from a pilot program, and then we asked to do more counties. At the same time, we also went after federal funding. So we enlarged from not just Skagit County, we're up to 11 counties in Washington State.
Wow.
We also got federal funding to do all of Washington, all of Oregon for federal funding. And then this big FRSAN grant came out from USDA NIFA. And I was like, we got to go for it. We got to do this. And so we made the application, got a whole bunch of wonderful partners, including you. And we're able to land a $7.18 million grant for 13 states and 4 territories in the West. even just kind of like saying that is like, it's kind of amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It is amazing. Yeah.
We're just a small county office. We have a staff of 20 people. And when anybody asks me, I still associate with being a farmer. So,
yeah, but I think that's one of the reasons that you were able to like be so helpful to the people that like needed it. Because you have like, I don't know, like I'm probably biased because I also am a farm kid. Melly's a farm kid. I was like, there's just like, you kind of, you know how to speak their language and talk with a producer,
Yeah.
or at least have an idea of what they're saying when they're telling you something. Like I said, like when you were talking about the crusty old guy, I was like, those are some of my favorite people.
Right.
When they come in and they like to talk, it's like, I enjoy that a lot of times. So
yeah, and they have so much knowledge and background
absolutely.
and
Lived experience is amazing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No. So it's been a wild ride, and we have fabulous partners, and the whole thing has just grown over time. It just seems like, I don't know, it's just really come together for us in a great way, and it feels like we're making a difference. So that all feels really good as well.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that y'all have done once you got this large grant? Can I ask?
Certainly. So it's divided up into 4 components. So we call it the BNOD. So there's the baseline. So we wanted to know, well, what's the problem? What are people experiencing? And so Michelle Grokey out of Montana State, she heads up the baseline, and them along with others have put together this really fabulous little report on, what the need is, and figuring out how we go about reaching our stakeholder group and finding out what their largest issues are. So that's been great. Then after the baseline is the networking. And so networking is headed by Esmeralda, Mandujano out of Cal State Davis. And so she's been trying to enlarge the pie, let people know about the grant, get them involved in it. And so she hosts quarterly outreach, mostly online, but she also goes to a good deal of workshops as well and conferences, trying to let people know who we are and what we're trying to do. Then we have Allison Brennan with Montana State, who does the outreach portion. So that's really focused in on making sure that our partners are doing what they're supposed to, and making sure that everything clicks along there. And then I have the direct services. So that's things like the website and the newsletter and any of the promotional materials that we're getting out there, or signage and billboards and all of that good work.
That seems like a lot of stuff that's going on for a small office. Like it's like I was equating it because that's about the size of the office here. So it's like that's a lot of stuff to have going on with all those partners too.
Well, and that's just one grant, right? We still have to outreach to all of our stakeholders here in the county. So taking care of all their pest and disease issues for 80 different crops in the valley. Master gardeners, food preservers, food scents. 4-H. Yeah, it's a lot of moving parts, but the part that I love about Extension is we're just very rarely bored. The day just clicks by, you show up, you blink, and it's time to go home, and you're shutting off the lights and it's dark out. So
we can relate.
Definitely.
For certain.
Yeah, and there's so much resources, I think, that we see out there, but not everybody knows really where to go, right? So, and that's what I think, Shannon, how do you direct them to the resources? And, what can we offer to our producers here in Hawaii as some of the resources that they can, lean on to when they're talking about farm and ranch stress in their networks, I should say.
Definitely. And that's the beauty of the farm stress suicide prevention work, is like nobody wants to hoard all of the content like maybe in some other research projects, but all roads are going to lead to hopefully some sort of successful intervention. And so what I like to do and within our partnership is, first check out the website, farmstress.us. It's really fabulous. Shannon Batchtel has done a great job liaising, getting that thing up and running. It's got a clearinghouse of information, so you can click on your state and it will give you a whole host of information in regards to farm stress suicide prevention. That's great. Also within this grant, there is a call center piece written into it. And so early on, we had reached out to an organization called Farm Aid, and that might be familiar to many of your listeners because they have a concert every year. If you go back to the 1980s and the farm crisis, Willie Nelson was a major player in that space, and he wanted to try to help farmers get out of debt and help them out. So we reached out to them because we really liked their call center. It's resource based. There's people on the other end of the line that either grew up on farms or worked on farms. So they have the background, they speak farmer. And so that's a great trait. And with the funding that we were able to bring in through this grant, we're able to extend their hours. So Farm Aid's based in Massachusetts. Their original call center was set up between the hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., 5 days a week for Eastern Standard Time. And let's be honest, if you're in Hawaii,
I was like 2 p.m. there. It's 8 a.m. here. So
it's just not going to work.
You're not going to get anybody here. Yeah.
Right. So nor does it work for our people in Washington State very well either.
Yeah, 4 hours. Yeah, that's a lot of time difference. So.
Right. And so what we asked them to do is to set up an office here in Washington State and actually allow them to use our office space in that process. So they're Farm Aid operators. They work for Farm Aid, but then I also put them on as a time slip for WSU. So they're 90% Farm Aid employees, 10% WSU to cover some of those administrative tasks. And they're on the call center right now, as a matter of fact. So if you call them 1-800-FARM-AID, you're going to probably talk to an operator that's right here in Burlington, Washington. It's not perfect for Hawaii, but it's a heck of a lot better than it is on the East Coast. And we did extend their hours clear past 7 p.m. So we're hoping that helps. We also, work closely with the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, and that's another good resource to call out to. So that number is 1-800-TALK. So that's 8255. So once again, that number is 1-800-273-8255.
And I think there's a text for it too. I remember you talking about it is it a text they have now? Like a text line? Because I was like, I remember seeing like your presentation recently and I was like, that's great. Because sometimes I don't want to talk on the phone. So I can see where people would prefer the text line sometimes.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny you mentioned that because, when I give these talks to farmers, they're always saying, when I give them the text number, then the farmers are saying, "Oh, you're putting that up for the millennials,
for my age,
right?" And I'm like, no. We're not doing it for the millennials. We're doing it for everyone. And what we've found is that many of our farmers don't want to talk, right?
Yeah.
So if you can give them a text line, then they're more apt to want to
start
to use the text. And so all you have to do is text hello to the number 741-741, and somebody will be on the other end and give you a response back.
Nice. So I'm going to ask a question because we have so many farmers that are immigrant farmers here or like non-native English speakers.
Right.
So it's like, I know that you have some support for those that so that people here who obviously are fluent in English listen to this podcast so that they can talk to their neighbors and their friends and family that maybe English is not their first language, or it's just much more easy to converse in whatever your native language is.
Oh, totally. I get it. Yeah. I did a study abroad to Quito, Ecuador, and I get that being immersed in another culture, in another language. And I had a hunger for English. I would go in the middle of the night to a movie just so I could hear English, right?
Really?
So I could get how people want to speak in their native tongue. And that's a really cool thing about this grant. We do have a small grants process.
Yeah.
So anyone can apply. Helps if you're a nonprofit working with extension, especially working with partners that signed on early to this grant. But you can apply up to $10,000. There's a translation grant. So you can use those funds to translate really anything into any different language. And, we really want that to happen. We knew that there was that need out there. So I encourage your listeners to sign up for a grant, get something in.
Yeah. So that is the thing with this grant is you do not have to be like just a university or just like a Hawaii Farmers Union or Hawaii Cattlemen's or like Hawaii Farm Bureau. You can be your own entity, have an idea of how you want to implement some of these things or how this might work well, but you can still apply for some. You have many grants available for them.
I do. Yes. Yeah. We learned early within the process, when you write a grant and you get funded, especially if it's a large amount, all of a sudden you get all these new friends. And these new friends have fabulous ideas and you want to implement them. But when you write a grant, everything is pretty much allocated early on. And so
it is,
in years past, I'd write a grant and somebody called me and like, hey, did you think about this?
And you're like, that would have been a good idea to know a year and a half ago. 6
months ago would have been fabulous. That would have been awesome. Sorry, I don't have any money to help you. But in this grant, we were smart enough to realize, hey, let's keep some dollars out of the pie. So when these people call and they've got a fabulous idea, we can get them funded and they can do this great work in their own communities. And that's another big component of this grant. You are from Hawaii.
Yeah.
I've visited the Big Island once on a tour, and I got to see how they grow macadamia nuts, and that was fabulous. But I don't really know. I don't know Hawaiian culture. I don't know Hawaiian farming. So I really rely on our partners to help us get that message out in the local areas.
I just wanted to make sure everybody knew about that because I was like, I think those are some real good opportunities for producers that probably have better ideas than any of the rest of us on like the best ways to implement some of these things. So
totally. Yeah, I think in academia, we get caught up a lot on prestige and what have you, but really grassroots, that's where that's where
you reach a lot of people that way, so.
Well, that's what you said about speaking farmer, and who speaks farmer better than the farmer themselves, when it comes to it. So I think that's important and good for them to know.
Yeah. Well, I know Mele and I applied for and got like one of the mini grants the last round. So I was like, it was very helpful to like, kind of like push forward and keep one of our programs up and running and like help it move a little further along in what we want to do. So
definitely.
Yeah. Having those extra reresources is great.
Very helpful.
Continue to push forward other programs as well. So,
and within that, there is a component that if you signed on to the grant early, there's up to 30 points that are available to those people. So like, since you guys are early signed.
I was going to say, I was there when you were writing the grant. I remember all the meetings we had.
Definitely. So they should partner with you so that they can get funded. It's like a free 30 points. So don't miss out on that opportunity.
Yeah. So, well, I'm happy if people have ideas and want to go for it,
Yeah.
I was like, I say, do it, you can reach out, send us an email. So
for sure. Shannon and I always have some great ideas. We just don't know where to go with them, or we don't have people to help, to implement some of them. And that's the other part of it. So it's always great to have the extra person out there, but
definitely.
Wow. Yeah. But I was like, it sounds like you have a lot of resources going on. I mean, that clearinghouse, I don't think people realize. We'll include links in the show notes. But that clearinghouse is massive and it's got stuff that's not just for the states. for each of the states individually, but it does have national stuff. And then it's got a lot of stuff that's like very applicable for here. That's through like HDOA. It's got different stuff, I think, with regards to like mediation. Some of them, I think it's got some of the mediation centers are almost, I know it's got 2 of them listed, I think, but it's got several of those things that like, you know, resources you can pull from and look at and like really help you kind of assess whatever you're needing to assess and go through. I feel like I'm not putting that. It's like a really well termed.
No, but it is. It's a great. You know, it is.
We're all going through things.
Resource.
So
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, and it's nice because you can go in and folks can go in and search like specific things that they want. You know, you don't have to just go by the state or where you're at. You can actually search those resources that are out there, or a specific topic that you're looking for. So, I mean, the resources are out there. I think this is such a great program. You know, growing up here in Hawaii, you know, I've been here forever. I have traveled around and lived in different places, but, you know, I mean, growing up is just culturally here, talking about stress and talking about like suicide or anything. There's a stigmatism, you know, in culture for us here. Yeah. That a lot of folks don't want to talk about it. So I think don't talk
about suicide. Don't talk about succession. Some of that stuff is just like I mean, it's not like great to talk about on the mainland, but I think even a little bit more here. Yeah.
Really.
So it's good to see that there's this program that's going out there that we can slowly start, you know, and get to introduce people to the resources that are just there, because some of them just don't even know. And I think it has opened my eyes for sure, because I've been, I hate to say it, but I was one of those that grew up that was just got told, suck it up and deal with it, you know? And sometimes it comes in your life where you can't, you know? So it's nice to know that there's some place we can point people to, that there's a resource. If they don't want to talk to somebody, there's a resource here you can look at and then go from there. You know, I feel like that's an important thing. And I felt like that's one great thing that I've learned from being a part of the FRSAN project, is learning about where the resources are and how to correctly direct people to certain things.
Agreed. Yeah, I think, you know, I was one of those kids that was taught from a young age that you just deal with your problems. You suck it up, right? You're not allowed to cry. You know, and I think we've come a long ways, but I think, you know, being able to express our feelings and realizing that, hey, it's okay not to be okay all the time. Yeah. That goes a long way. And then in regards to succession planning, so when I started my career here at WSU Skagit County Extension, I had this farm succession training class, and I went around to all my most successful farmers in the county, and I got them to have this panel, and I thought, oh man, I'm really doing a great job. I'm highlighting how all amazing my farmers are. And we got to the end of it, and the question got asked, thank you very much. Do you have a written succession plan for the next generation? And every one of my farmers were like, well, no, I didn't write it down. Like, it's all up here. I got it. I got a plan, right? And I'm like, because I asked them specifically, do you have a plan? They're like, yeah, we got a plan. So yeah, getting that stuff on paper is so important for our farmers. And then go back and review it every few years, because things change, right?
Yeah. All I'm thinking of is my parents. I was like, because we've been in the discussion for a while, and I will just say that their last updated will included their 2 children. And let me just say that was my older brother and sister who are 10 years older. So again, we're in the process. The discussion's being had.
So Shannon's cut out, but
it's slow going. So I everybody who's going through it, like, we've all been there. It's no fun to talk about, but yeah, it's really important. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Nobody lives forever. Can't take it with you. So make sure you get it in writing so that the next generation can really thrive. And with that, one of the lawyers had a really great point, that, you know, life shouldn't be fair for the recipients of the farm either. His idea was, the kid that stays home that farms, they should get the farm, and then you should take out a life insurance policy
Yes.
for the other offspring that aren't interested in the farm. And I thought, oh, that's such a great idea, because
You
usually
have to be able to afford the life insurance policy too, though. I mean, not to like bust the bubble. So that's a thing that when I've done succession planning, we always tell people, or I've always told people, fair isn't equal, but equal isn't fair. So,
right. Yeah, because usually there's, say there's 3 siblings, and then the one that actually is doing all the work, they got to cut a check to the other 2.
Yeah.
That's
and can they afford to do that if they've been working for you the whole time, or don't, have a whole lot of their own equity in anything other than what they helped you build?
Right.
That is now the other siblings as equally as, so it's just like, yeah.
But back to farm stress suicide prevention.
That is stressful for a lot of people. Tangentially related,
right? I mean, it's stressful to think about the planning and doing the whole succession plan, but then if you don't have it, it's twice as worse for the folks that are having to deal with
and
it.
More
when
expensive.
You're not there, and you don't have a plan in there. So,
farm and ranch stress. It sounds like there's a lot of tools out there. I think it's more that we just really need to work on, making people aware of it, hopefully. And then again, if additional tools need to be developed, I was like, it sounds like, I know you've been working on several over the last, I guess it's a little over a year now. We're headed into year 2, right, of the grant?
Right. So we're just a little bit more than halfway through.
Yeah.
The WRASAP grant. But we've made really good strides. We also picked up some funding through the State Department of Ag grants. So USDA had some additional funding come in because of COVID, and they sent out RFPs to all of the state departments of Ag, upwards of $500,000. So in Washington State, we actually added an Ag economist. And so this Ag economist drives throughout the state, sets meetings with farmers, sits down with them at their kitchen table, goes over their books, and is also looking for signs of crisis while he's there. And, my example is I had a farmer in a neighboring county that was in pretty bad shape financially, was considering, potentially going out of business and not farming anymore. And so I had this ag economist sit down with him, and when he visited the farms, he noticed that there was things that were out of sorts. A haystack that wasn't covered, and in Western Washington we get 32 inches of rain, so you can't have hay sit outside and not have it covered, kind of scenario. And so it really helped me as the extension faculty member put myself at ease, realizing that this gentleman would sit down with him and learn more about his operation, and then be able to get that farmer some help. And I think I've since reached out to that farmer, and he's doing much better. And so things like that definitely are out there. We're also looking at putting together a voucher program for Washington State. So that's up to 6 free visits for a farmer to go see a counselor.
That's awesome.
Oh,
yeah.
Harder to get off the ground than what I initially thought, but
I would wonder, well, we'll talk about that after this when we're done, but I was like, I have some questions about that, because we've been thinking about that as a possibility here as well.
Yeah. The science says that a farmer, or a farm worker, if they were to get a free voucher to go see a counselor, that they would actually use it. And then
because they didn't have to pay for it, of course.
Right.
It's like a coupon.
Right.
Yeah.
But then once they visit the counselor up to 6 times, they're more apt to pay for it themselves, because they actually see the value within the system. So that's an opportunity. Also just got off the phone with a gentleman in Minnesota who runs kind of a similar program, but his is offered through the state, and they just pay a full-time counselor to be on call to go do counseling sessions with farmers and farm workers. And so I think that's another opportunity that's out there. And so it's just figuring out what's going to work for your state, how you can get funding to do it, and then move it forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think the nice thing is that there is like you said, the 1-800, the suicide prevention hotline, the text number, but that farm stress, they have a lot of resources they can direct people to if you're having the farm aid number. Sorry, I want to call it farm stress. But
I knew what you were talking about.
because I mean, a lot of what they deal with farm aid is farm stress. I was like, whether that's someone who's having a problem with planting, or I generally think of farm aid again, because you say Willie Nelson. It's like, I generally think of it as a lot of basically financial stress. So my understanding is they have a lot of resources for people under any sort of financial stress related to ag. And it doesn't just have to be farms or ranches. So it could be people here, like we have nursery landscape. We have it's very wide and diverse. So I should say, when we're saying farm, we mean it in the most generic term. It is agriculture in general. So, but I mean, my understanding is, I haven't called, so I don't know. But when I looked at the Farm Aid website, I was like, it looked like they have a ton of resources for folks.
They do. They've really done a good job. And don't feel like, I get this all the time. Like, people are like, oh, they're so busy. I would hate to like take up space from somebody that's calling that's suicidal. And the fact of the matter is, call volumes have gone up since COVID, but
that's not a bad thing.
They're getting about 10 calls a day in my office. So it's reasonable. Like, for them to pick up an extra couple calls isn't going to overburden them. So don't feel like you can't make that call. Pick it up, give them a call, and pick their brains and see if they can't assist you with an issue that you're up against.
Yeah. So, okay. So with Farm Aid, though, it sounds like I said, they direct you towards resources. Do they like, if someone really needs help walking through whatever the steps of something are there like people they can direct them to? I'm just thinking, like, if someone is looking at, again, I'm ag economist in my background. I do a lot with finance and money. So I'm sorry, that's where my mind goes to.
That's okay.
So it's like, if someone is trying to, especially with the way things are going, get out of debt or figure out their financial situation, can they direct them to, like, because that's the other thing, is there's a lot of predatory when it comes to finance stuff that that could be a whole other thing I could talk about. But and with Farm Aid, I'm assuming a lot of that's already been vetted and checked out generally.
Exactly.
So it's like, if they need help with something like that, is there I'm assuming there's lines and resources for them to direct them to, because if someone really needs like that credit help, I was like, you really need someone to walk you through all those steps and hold your hand, because it's a lot to deal with. So
exactly. Yeah. And they're really good with the USDA system. So
yes,
they can help hold your hand through some of that.
That's good. Okay. Yeah. That's what I wanted to know. Cause I was like, I'm just thinking, like, if I were in those situations, I was like, you kind of need someone to help hold your hand and guide you through it, because it's just, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that will take advantage of other people out there. So, but yeah. So having those resources like Farm Aid and like the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network, like, it's really helpful, because everybody's pretty much been vetted. Everybody's kind of gone through checks and double checks within multiple agencies a lot of times. So, I don't know, maybe I'm just paranoid because my parents are getting older and I'm always like, don't pick up that phone.
No, I get it. There's a lot of creeps out there, and person needs to be careful.
Yeah. But I mean, I just think the resources that you provided through Farm and Ranch Stress, and being able to add on to the Farm Aid website, but the Farm Aid phone line, I was like, it's very helpful,
Thank you. Yeah, it's just been a great project. We're increasing our outreach. We're doing a lot of billboards right now. So we did get an additional $100,000 through FRSAN. And so we in the West, because there are 4 different FRSAN regions, but we in the West decided to put that extra $100,000 towards advertising and getting the word out. So we're working with 10 different states currently, and getting some billboards and signage and magnets and what have you out.
Yeah, I think it's just signage and magnets and stuff here, because we don't have billboards in Hawaii.
That's right.
But we are working on getting that done. So
Exactly. So that's going to
Yeah.
be exciting to get more of that out there. And then also wanted to make mention,
Mhm.
because I know, Shannon, you're very interested in our video vignettes.
Yes.
Did 4 of them, 4 minutes each. And we actually submitted for some awards. So those vignettes won a NACAA, which is National Association of County Ags State Award, and they'll be going
Nice.
up to the regions and to the nation. And we'll see how that one fares, as
good.
well as they got submitted for a Emmy award for PSA.
Whoa.
Wow.
I will say the one that you showed kind of almost, I mean, it was kind of a tearjerker a little bit. It was pretty good, you know, especially like the resources and the messages you had at the end were really nice to like kind of uplift the situation. It was really good. Yeah.
Thanks. That was a fun project. You know, it was kind of funny because you get with these producers and whatnot, and I'm thinking that they're going to write the whole thing and like do it all, and I'll just send them a check, and they're like, "Oh no, we don't know anything about agriculture. How about you write the script?" And I was like, "Okay, I guess I'll take the first crack at it." So I ended up writing the scripts, and then we had them vetted.
Yeah.
And there was a couple issues that they brought up, so we had to change some of those things around. But overall, a great project. It was filmed on location at my parents' farm, and the house that I live in, which is the house my great grandfather built. So pretty cool, and had some local actors that I went to school with and their kids. So
Nice.
yeah, it's fun when you can put something like that together.
It was
probably
a
the
good vignette.
closest I'll ever get to like a red carpet debut. So
I mean, an Emmy would be pretty, I mean, even
Yeah.
being like submitted I mean, that's pretty big thing. So
yeah, the nomination was
like,
accepted. So
wow.
I'm calling it a win already.
I would, yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Is your vignette on? I know it's on they're on the FRSAN websites, aren't they? The WRASAP
Yeah,
one? That's what I was thinking.
on the farmstress.us site.
Yeah. I just couldn't remember if it was also on like, because I was thinking Skagit County had a YouTube channel, but I could be wrong because I feel like most counties here have one. So
Yeah,
I was thinking it was on.
It's not on a YouTube channel itself, but you can get to it through our website as well.
Okay, well, we'll be sure to link to it like below in our show notes and description box. So
perfect.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Dawn, for visiting with us and taking some time. Is there anything else you want to share about the Farm and Ranch Stress Program and resources before we close up?
You know, I think just I'm really interested to hear from your listeners to see what sort of ideas they have. Because as you mentioned, you know, our best ideas come from the grassroots and the people that are working on the land, and you know, they're the ones experiencing the stress. So I'm interested to hear from them what sort of ideas they might have and how we get out of this epidemic of farm suicides. You know, I think we've made good progress, but we still have more to go. I mean, there's still farm suicides happening, and so as long as that's taking place, then we have more work to do. So if they can solve the problem for me so I don't have to go after the next round of funding,
that would be great. I bet.
Oh, well, we hope our listeners gain some knowledge and some tools and resources related to our Farm and Ranch Stress Assistant Network. Listeners, be sure to visit the Seeds of Wellbeing or SOW website and our YouTube channel listed in the show notes below.
Yep. For additional information about the topics, see the links provided in the show notes and the description. Thanks for listening to the SOW podcast.
And before we go, show some love for your favorite podcast by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to this podcast. And then stay tuned again for next month. Mahalo for listening. And thank you, John, for joining us today.
Yes, thank you. Mahalo.